Okay, welcome to our webinar from the National Summer Learning Association on summer and after school in the 2020 presidential race. We are excited to share with you some great information about what's going on in the presidential campaigns in the education space and how summer and after school can fit in. We have a great lineup of speakers today, so we're going to share a lot of great information from some different perspectives. And at the end of our presentations, we'll have some time for question and answers. So please use the question and answer box to submit questions for discussion later in the webinar. Let me just tell you a little bit about the National Summer Learning Association. Our vision is that every child will grow during the summer and have these wonderful opportunities. We know that summers matter because decades of research really demonstrate the challenges of summer and also the opportunities. So the National Summer Learning Association is really dedicated to ensuring that communities and programs and families are tackling this problem of inequity during the summertime. Like I said, we have a great lineup today to talk about summer from lots of different perspectives. We have Emily Richmond from the Education Writers Association, Crystal Brown from the Boys and Girls Club of America, Jennifer McCombs from the RAND Corporation, and I'm Rachel Gwaltney. I'm from the National Summer Learning Association. And we're going to take you through lots of different facets of summer learning and why it matters to communities and what presidential campaigns should know and can do about this issue and some issues that ways that reporters and media can help elevate summer and after school during the education campaign discussions. So first I'm going to ask Emily to share with us a little bit about what are the education themes that are popping up on the campaign trail that are of particular interest to folks.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and it's great to be here, and Rachel, and I appreciate this opportunity very much to share some of what education reporters are telling us are their priorities for the 2020 year. I mean, certainly one of the big themes that we're seeing nationally is questions about equity and the different forms that that can take. And for example, we're talking about educational equity in terms of opportunity, as well as in the experiences that students are receiving, and equity in terms of educational funding. There have been a growing number of high-profile lawsuits in which school funding formulas at the state level have been challenged. As probably many people in the audience already know, federal money accounts for a very small percentage overall of what schools get to spend, and the biggest burden really is on the states and local communities. So we're seeing a lot of interest in educational equity, and that certainly does apply to those summer learning experiences and to after-school programs. We have a lot of questions and concerns that are being raised by parents and communities and policymakers and stakeholders about the things that are just de facto for families that have a little bit of the extra money laying around, and certainly for the more affluent families. Things like after-school enrichment programs, summer camp, summer learning opportunities, tutoring programs, all of the things that have been proven to show that help kids not just fill in the gaps to what they're learning during the school day, but to get a step ahead. And we know that gap is widening, and certainly that's a question of equity and what presidential candidates say they're going to do to address it in a meaningful way. Also, of course, not just at the presidential level, but where that's coming down at the state legislatures, US House and congressional representatives, and then of course the local school boards. All of those races are things that education reporters are watching and paying close attention to right now.
Great, thanks so much. So when we talk about why summer matters within these educational themes and conversations, we have some highlights that we want to share. So we've produced this document, which we will make available to folks after the webinar. It's located in the summerlearning.org Knowledge Center. And this is our guidance document for presidential campaigns to begin thinking about why summer matters and how summer fits into the education and family support landscape. So first of all, as we've said, we know that summer is a great time of greatest inequity. We say that because during the school year, all students, no matter where they go to school or where they live, they have access to all kinds of resources through their school, whether that's learning, caring and supportive adults, nutritious meals, physical activity, enrichment programs, and even healthcare. And during the summertime, that faucet of resources turns off for many of our low-income families. So they're not able to access those regular meals or regular enrichment or regular learning activities or even healthcare. So we know that summer is just this time when that access to basic needs is really difficult for some families. We also know from the research that lack of summer programs affects academic achievement. So we've seen from many different research studies that without regular support and practice during the summertime, our low-income students are falling behind, while our middle and high-income students are staying on track or even moving ahead. So we've seen from the data the impact on academic achievement of the lack of summer programs. We also know that summer childcare is very difficult for working families. More than 70% of families agree that summer activities are important, but only a third of families are enrolling their children in a summer program. And we know that parents report different kinds of barriers, whether that's knowing where programs are, being able to find something of high quality, and certainly cost is an issue as well. And we'll look at those numbers in just a moment. We also know that summer has a high return on investment. So a little bit of public investment turns into a lot more support and investment at the community level. We know for every public dollar spent on summer, programs are raising another 2 private dollars. So just a little bit of public funding makes a big difference. We also know from research that the power of summer programs is very strong. So just a little bit of summer literacy support by extending the school year, for instance, in one state, resulted in a greater return in learning than the 9 months of literacy instruction that they had done during the school year. So we know that summer really works. And we also know that states are investing in summer. As Emily said, there are states passing school finance reform laws that are including extra funding for summer. We know states have supported funding streams that boost the federal investments in summer, whether it's through nutrition programs and supporting the expansion of the nutrition programs, supporting the investment in 21st Century Community Learning Center programs and adding on to those investments. So we know states are starting to look at summer in a lot of different ways and think about where that investment can be boosted. And I'll share with you just a couple of the data points. We have some more information like this on our website. As I said, only about a third of families report having a child in a summer program, but we know that there's really strong importance for families in knowing that summer matters and just not being able to find those programs. We know that the average national cost of a summer program is $288 per child per week. So this is not just a low-income problem. This is a middle-income problem. This is difficult for families at many levels to find and afford the kind of summer programming that they want their children to be in for 6, 7, 8 weeks throughout the summertime. We also know that only 1 in 7 children who are eligible are accessing subsidized summer meals. The same programs that allow kids to get free and reduced meals during the school year also offer the opportunity for meals during the summertime, but because of issues around communication and awareness, transportation, finding eligible meal sites, it's really difficult for families and children to access those meals. And so that's an important piece that summer programs play as well, of helping to close that nutrition gap. And we also know that there's high support for investment, public investment in summer programs. So we know that, families want the government to be supporting this kind of work. And again, as we said, a little bit of federal investment and state investment goes a long way to supporting and boosting and encouraging these programs to grow at the local level. So I'm going to turn our discussion over now to Jen McCombs from the RAND Corporation, who's going to share with you some new information from this report that we are very excited about from the National Academy of Sciences. Jen, you want to go ahead?
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for inviting me. So I'm going to briefly go over a little bit and highlight some of the committee's work that's coming out of the National Academy of Sciences Committee on Shaping Summertime Experiences, talk a little bit about our findings, and highlight a few of our recommendations. Okay. And if I can figure out a way to toggle forward, I will do that. There we go. All right. So the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Wallace Foundation sponsored the National Academy of Sciences to form a study committee to examine the available evidence on how summertime experiences affect school-age children across 4 areas of well-being. And I back it up here if it goes, and perhaps not. So we're asked specifically to focus on academic learning and opportunities for enrichment, social and emotional development, physical and mental health, safety, risk-taking, and pro- and antisocial behaviors. And so what's interesting about this is we're asked to focus on sort of these multiple domains of well-being, and we're asked specifically to focus on developmental trajectories and how they're affected during the summer across these domains, the availability and accessibility and effectiveness of programs and experiences for children and youth, and policies that potentially are affecting access and experiences. And the resulting report is unique in that it offers this cross-sectional and sectoral look at summertime experiences. And here you'll see that we have sort of 13 committee members, so representing a lot of folks here. And these individuals have expertise in education, juvenile justice, medicine, business, out-of-school time programming, psychology, public health, public policy, sociology, summer learning, urban planning, and youth development. So we had a lot of expertise, a lot of diversity in the committee, and a lot of different perspectives were represented. Okay. And Rachel, I'm sorry, there we go. And for some reason, I think I'm hitting a delay on this. There we go, and that's messing me up a little bit. So in terms of our methodology, we met in person 5 times to gather information, share findings, and deliberate about conclusions and recommendations. The findings underpinning the conclusion and recommendations are drawn from an extensive literature review of the questions outlined in the statement of task, information that we obtained from federal, state, and municipal entities, papers that were commissioned, and memos that we received from knowledgeable stakeholder organizations, and also a public information gathering session that focused on testimony from experts around issues and programs related to rural communities, Native American Indian communities, and the private sector. We used a systems approach when examining the outcomes and improvement opportunities in the 4 outcome domains of interest. The system approach enabled us to gain a better understanding of the ways that summer programming is delivered across multiple disconnected sectors that may affect the specific outcomes of interest. And it also helps us identify targets for improvement as well as potential interactions between sectors and agents. So I think this has been alluded to quite nicely by Rachel, but we also concur. We found sort of like the summer months present this major departure from the structure, resources, and support systems that are available to children and youth and their parents during the traditional school year. These summertime experiences can affect academic, health, social, emotional, and safety outcomes for children and youth in both positive or negative ways. So summer is both a time of opportunity and a time of risk for children and youth. However, those opportunities and risks are not equitably distributed across groups. High-quality summer programs are providing opportunities for youth to develop skills and interests. However, children from low-income families and communities have less access to these programs. And when schools close for the summer, children, youth, and families are losing a number of vital supports, such as access to healthy meals, medical care, daily supervision, and structured enrichment opportunities. And these losses make summer a particularly vulnerable time for many children, particularly from communities and families with fewer resources. I'm going to briefly highlight a small set of conclusions that emerge from our evidence. The first is that all children have basic developmental needs, particularly around food and safety, that need to be met as a critical precondition for summer programs and services. Those in less advantageous circumstances are at risk for worse outcomes. So they face a number of obstacles in having their needs met across all of the developmental domains and in accessing positive summer experiences. However, there are also opportunities to implement innovative programming and extend effective practices from the school year into the summer. The assets and priorities of families and communities are critical to the development of summer programming that best meets youth needs. And finally, much remains. Well, we understood and had a lot of findings that are documented in this paper. We also don't know a lot about many things, so much remains to be known about the precise ways that summer affects the development of youth across the 4 domains of interest. And in particular, research on the impact of summer outside of the academic domain is scarce, and many of the data sources that are available don't adequately capture seasonal differences in the 4 outcome domains. So now for the recommendations. So the first is around enabling funding and resources. So the committee recommended that federal and state government agencies should review existing policies and regulations and programs for children and youth to enable their continuation during the summer months. So these are to be particularly around effective physical activity, nutrition, obesity prevention, and enrichment programs. And so here you'll see an example of that Rachel actually alluded to earlier, which is around access to free and reduced price meals, which we know is a particular challenge in many communities. One of the opportunities of summer lies in the provision of summer programming, and we found that there are many types of summer programs that are effective in producing positive youth outcomes across the 4 domains of interest. That includes summer camps, medical camps, academic programs, youth employment programs, and programs that are designed to meet specific physical and mental health needs of youth. However, we also know that not all programs are effective in doing so. And across the set of study, a set of best practices emerged where regular participation, sufficient duration, and targeted programming to meet youth needs were correlated with program effectiveness. And so in order to promote equitable access to quality programs, we recommend that those funding and supporting summertime experiences for children and youth target resources for summer programs that focus on underserved youth, children and youth, that are aimed at targeting specific needs of participants in developmentally and culturally appropriate methods, that actually identify specific outcomes and measures, have plans to promote strong attendance, and are accessible to students. So we talked a little bit earlier, and it's really highlighted in the report around how we have multiple sectors that are interacting to provide services over the summer months, and they really tend to be relatively disjointed. Theirs are done by sectors and agents that are making independent decisions with little coordination with one another. And as a result, what we get sometimes is suboptimal impact of summertime experiences for children and youth. So we encourage local governments and intermediaries who can each play roles in improving this coordination. Local governments can work to identify and fill gaps between desired and needed services, and intermediaries in turn can create systems, platforms, and communication vehicles for promoting positive summertime experiences for children and youth and best practices. And finally, we also recommend building more of the summertime evidence. So as I noted, there's a dearth of evidence in certain databases around summer as an independent season. And this makes it really difficult to fully understand summertime experiences of children and youth. So to help fill that gap, we're recommending that government agencies at the federal, state, and local level, and non-governmental organizations like foundations that sponsor surveys and collect data on children and youth that are including the summer months, actually establish and maintain databases that allow for disaggregation of the data by month so we can look at summer as a separate time. And to extend academic year data collection into the summer where it's applicable, and of course, to be able to share data across systems whenever possible. So I encourage everybody who's interested to go look for a copy of the report. I think that there are also plans for an associated research brief around this for policymakers that maybe are a little bit more accessible and not as long as 200 pages, but there is also a nice, very nice executive summary that people can look at if they're interested. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jen. And I will add to that plug that we are going to be hosting another webinar that will take a really deep dive on this report on February 19th. So you can look at the NSLA website for more information about how to sign up for that webinar. So now I'm going to pass things over to Crystal Brown from the Boys and Girls Club of America to tell us a little bit about, what does this really mean for communities and programs and families on the ground? So Crystal, tell us more about what the work that Boys and Girls Club is doing in the summer space.
Sure, Rachel, thank you so much. And Jen, thank you for laying that foundation in terms of what the data is suggesting and what the needs are given that. At Boys and Girls Clubs of America, really our mission is to enable all young people, and especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential. Since our founding in the 1800s, we've really focused in on the whole child and what that really means, supporting their health, supporting their academics, and supporting their character. You know, and our vision is simple. It is really providing a world-class experience for young people with multiple opportunities to expose them to experiences they may have not ever experienced before, so that they are work and life ready. And so that at the heart of what we do is critical. And so what grounds us in mission is this reality that there is a widening wealth and equity and skills gap in our country. We know that resources are scarce by community. We know that there's a huge conversation on equity, and that states are having different conversations about what does it look like for them. Boys and Girls Clubs are part of those conversations, and really thinking about how do they work with young people and their families every single day to ensure the success of those young people. So at the heart of it, we really, as we think about Boys and Girls Clubs, we have 3 goals. We want to provide access for 8 million youth to quality out-of-school time experiences. We know at present we're serving about 4.7 million youth. We want to double down on that because we know that there's still a gap in terms of the services being provided to young people in our nation. We want to increase equity by delivering experiences that ensure all young people have the skills that they need. We know that there's a lot of robust conversation about the importance of social and emotional skills or soft skills. We believe that all young people should have regular exposure to those skills, as well as hard skills or domain-specific skills or academic skills. And last, we want to ensure that all Boys and Girls Clubs provide a safe environment where members can grow socially, emotionally, and cognitively. That's really important. So a few priorities that lie inside of that as we think about those goals. One is the need to strengthen local organizations. Boys and Girls Clubs is unique in that we are a federated model, and so we have a national organization that really works with local clubs around the country and on military youth installations to support them from an organizational development perspective to a programming perspective to a professional development perspective. We want to continue to strengthen those organizations so that they build capacity to serve more young people. We know that the quality in which a program sits is critical. Quality and quality content must go together. So we want to make sure that all local youth development professionals have the adequate training needed to provide those quality experiences to young people. And also really want to ensure that we amplify workforce readiness and really raise the conversation that workforce readiness is not about just our teenage young people and ensuring that they're life and work ready, but it starts at age 6 with our youngest population and ensuring they are exposed to career experiences so that we can build the skills necessary to fulfill gaps in employment pipelines. So those dimensions as it relates to program quality are really important to us. You know, one of the things that is really important in that we're really doubling down on is this idea of advocating for youth development. Really important in this day and age that we as a national organization and as local Boys and Girls Clubs really work with all of their key stakeholders so that when there's a conversation or an emerging youth trend, that Boys and Girls Clubs are at the table. We are working with local policymakers on how Boys and Girls Clubs can be part of the solution. I'm going to try to advance. There's a little delay. So when we think about Boys and Girls Clubs, just to give you an illustration of our scale and our reach, we serve about, again, 4.7 million youth with about 4,600 local Boys and Girls Clubs. I won't read kind of the demographics, but you can see there's breadth and depth in terms of the types of young people served by clubs, and really to the point about the importance of being culturally relevant. That is key in terms of how our clubs are serving their local populations. So just to give you a few data points, when we think about serving the young people who need us most, we know that that is ever-changing in the landscape of our country. But at present, 61% of club members qualify for free or reduced price lunch, and 40% of club members live in single-parent households. And so again, our local club leaders are really focused in on what's happening in their communities, the changing demographics, and how can they continue to serve the young people who need us most. Sorry about the delay in the slide. Rachel, do you mind taking control for me?
Yep, got it.
Okay.
There we go.
Thanks so much. Thank you. And with more than 155 years of experience, we take an outcome-driven approach. We hold ourselves high to accountability and really look at data and say, what does the data suggest in terms of our youth development approach? And so we measure outcomes across 3 priority outcome areas, that being academic success, good character and citizenship, and healthy lifestyles. And so our National Youth Outcomes Initiative, or NYOI, we love our acronyms, is the largest privately held youth development data set. And so this research-validated annual survey identifies key practices that informs our youth development strategy and how we design, program, and provide support to local clubs. So just to give you a snapshot of some of the outcomes we're seeing, older teens identified as 16 plus have a high quality club experience, are 38% more likely to graduate from high school on time. When we talk about the high quality club experience, we're talking about 5 important dimensions: a safe, positive environment, there's fun, there are opportunities and expectations, supportive relationships, and recognition. And so when youth receive those experiences, they're 38% more likely to graduate from high school on time. 12th graders are 26% more likely to abstain from alcohol use than 12th graders nationally. 83% of club members believe they can make a difference in the community. In an ROI study that was conducted, a $1 investment in Boys and Girls Clubs returns about $9.60 to the community. And so you can see the impact when you think about a Boys and Girls Club serving as a protective factor. And when all of those things in place, a supportive adult and encouraging an environment, you can see, how that particular condition supports youth outcomes. So next slide. So again, just to kind of center our goals, again, we aspire to double the number of youth we serve annually from about 4.3 million in 2017 to 8 million in 2025, and delivering a high quality experience in life readiness and workforce readiness. And so there are a couple of different ways we think about doing that are really important to us. Thinking about digital platforms. We know that young people are digitally connected, and so how do we think about taking a club experience and driving that digitally? We think about the power of local and national partnerships, that we can reach more youth by the strategic partners that we bring on board, and scaling collaborations with schools as a key factor. Next slide. And we know at the foundation of all of our efforts is really our thinking about our advocacy efforts. And recently we've rolled out the Agenda for America's Youth. This is a rallying cry to advocate for all youth in America, and again, to ensure that there are at the base are out of school time opportunities for all youth, not just what current Boys and Girls Club kids. We imagine that through this advocacy work, we can drive safer childhoods, right? Really thinking about what are the emotional and physical safety needs of young people, really thinking about our health and wellness agenda and local clubs being partners locally to support some of the emerging health and wellness concerns. When we think about education, career, and leadership, really, I talked a little bit about our workforce readiness strategy. We're really making sure that even at age 6 that young people are exposed to career experiences so that they are life and work ready. And what sits at the base of all of this really is equity and inclusion. Really making sure that not only young people have access, but they're equitable, high quality experiences as being really, really important. So, when we think about the Agenda for America's Youth, it is our moral cry to make sure, again, that Boys and Girls Clubs are at the center of conversations. So when there's something happening with youth in America, that Boys and Girls Clubs are shoulder to shoulder with their local stakeholders, and Boys and Girls Clubs can be part of that solution. Next slide. So just wanted to give you a color into our approach before I highlight a specific summer learning program that we offer at Boys and Girls Clubs. Again, as we think about the whole child, our ultimate goal when we think about ensuring that a young person is life and work ready is really about behavior change. But we know that safety sits at the foundation, and we prioritize physical and emotional safety through the structures, through the staff practices, and making sure that we have a system of continuous quality improvement. You know, from there we then think about, you know, the importance of that one relationship, right? And ensuring that young people every day receive high quality club experiences. Again, we're talking about a safe, positive environment, fun, supportive relationships, opportunities and expectations and recognition. It really, for us, is the core of what we do, and it then helps to facilitate then immediate and more long-term outcomes related to skills, knowledge, and attitudes. And as we think about how a young person progresses through a Boys and Girls Club, ultimately the impact we want to have are in our 3 priority outcome areas. So we know when you think about that theory of change, you immediately go to the things at the top, you know, things that you can see: programming, relationships, environments, practices. But we also know in order to drive that, there are professional development experiences that need to have happen for those working with young people every day. There needs to be systems of continuous quality improvement, that local clubs are really looking at their data regularly. They're saying, what do our kids need? What does the data suggest? Making improvement plans and implementing those plans. And so that is a dimension that sits under what you can see, but a critical system to ensuring this work is sustainable. We have operating procedures, right? When we think about safety, there are policies and procedures that we need clubs to undertake every single day to ensure the safety of members and staff, as well as management and leadership practices. At every level of a Boys and Girls Club organization, there are practices that then help facilitate the high quality club experience, right? We go back to the base of our approach. So wanted to give you a little color of, you know, the system that we think through in terms of how the programming really hits a young person. Next slide. So wanted to give you a window in to one of our project-based learning programs that really was created out of really addressing the need of summer learning loss. The one thing that I would say about that is clubs provide programming, and I'm going to take you through one programming, but really this sits in the context of a Boys and Girls Club, which makes it so special because you already have the support of adults, you have the systems in place, and then you layer on then the high quality programming, right? So the programming and the context must fit together in order to drive impact for young people. So Rachel, if you can progress. I won't spend a lot of time there because I think we've set really great context for, you know, why this conversation is really, really important. But we know that we have access and equity issues as relates to summer learning, and that this is a conversation about equity. But the important point here is that Boys and Girls Clubs become partners to a variety of community stakeholders, schools, parents, and caregivers to provide access to enrichment. And so that is really why when families think about a Boys and Girls Club, they are thinking about they can go and they're able to continue to work and do the things that they need to do to take care of their families, and they know that they have a high quality place to send their kids, and we're leveraging every single moment for skill building, even in the summer months. And so that is a really critical point as we think about summer learning loss as an equity issue. Rachel, if you'll advance. So, you know, we know the data that summer learning loss causes youth from low-income families to fall behind their wealthier peers. And so that was really the rallying cry behind the Summer Brain Gain program. So for us, Summer Brain Gain is a foundational program in our education core program area. We know that unless young people practice academic skills over the summer, they will lose an average of 2 months' worth of math skills. And youth from low-income families also lose an average of 2 months' worth of reading skills. Summer learning loss stacks up year to year, broadening the achievement gap from lower and higher income youth. And we know that the achievement gap between youth of different socioeconomic levels has nothing to do with student motivation or ability, and it has everything to do with access to enriching learning experiences. But the good news is Boys and Girls Club has a solution, and that is summer brain gain. This 6 weeks of learning program has produced statistically significant gains in academic performance. And in order to offer 6 weeks of enriching learning, summer learning programs, Boys and Girls Clubs invite youth to participate in this program. So the goal with Summer Brain Gain is designed to help all youth graduate on time, help them to be motivated to learn with a plan to succeed in today's modern workforce. So if you advance to the next slide, I want to share a little bit of evidence that we have on Summer Brain Gain. We've conducted 2 evaluations. The first in 2013 and 2014, METIS Associates conducted an evaluation. METIS completed case studies, conducted reading and math pre-tests and post-tests, conducted youth surveys, and analyzed data from the weekly staff implementation logs. They found that on average, Summer Brain Gain participants did not experience learning loss and instead maintained their reading and math skill levels. So that was the first evaluation that really helped us understand that the design of that experience was on par with the intended outcomes. And in 2015, METIS conducted a more rigorous evaluation through a randomized controlled trial. The evaluation was focused on youth in elementary school, and youth in Summer Brain Gain experienced no significant summer learning losses in math or reading, and there were notable increases in math for members enrolled in Summer Brain Gain. So we know that youth participating locally in Summer Brain Gain experience gains in social emotional skills like teamwork, collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving. So again, one window into one program that is on the ground at Boys and Girls Clubs, really solving for the challenges related to summer learning loss. Next slide. So just to give you a window into the outcomes, you know, initially we just want youth to participate in fun educational programming during the summer. We want to expose them to different learning experiences so that they get excited about learning and that they continue that development trajectory. In the intermediate, we want to make sure that youth experiences no loss of summer learning, and they build academic and social and emotional skills. And ultimately, we want to make sure that young people have a love of learning and they are effective learners. And so again, that is how we think about how we want young people to progress through the Summer Brain Gain program. Next slide. So from a Boys and Girls Club perspective, you know, again, that is one program in a myriad of programs that we offer young people every day and in the summer months. But 3 specific ways that we think federal support is needed is as such. For the summer food program, the USDA helps provide meals and snacks at no cost to low-income youth. And what we really ask is that the support of summer meals and the Summer Meals Act to improve programs by streamlining the after-school and summer application process, improving the area of eligibility to 40%, providing an option of serving 3 meals, and provide transportation grants. We want to ensure that all clubs have access to meals during the summertime, with, again, the outcome of meals and snack programs being easier to implement. When we think about youth mentoring, really our ask is to support $120 million for the youth mentoring program, and so that more programs can utilize or expand their mentoring programs. Mentoring is the core of what we do. We know the power of the relationship a young person can have with one adult, and so mentoring being mission critical for us. And last but not least really is the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. And again, the ask is to support $1.35 billion for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. Again, we want to ensure that young people have robust experiences in every domain of their lives, that they are life and work ready, and these supports can help amplify that work. Rachel, back to you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We are now going to digest all of that wonderful information that Jennifer and Crystal has shared with us. And Emily and I are going to talk a little bit about, okay, where do you kind of take that information from here? So I want to start by sharing you know, going back to the memo that we've developed and taking all this great information, what do we think that campaigns and candidates and government agencies should be thinking about when they think, all right, what can we do from a government perspective to help improve summer opportunities at the community level? So we see a few different things that we really want campaigns to focus on. The first is removing the barriers for programs and families. So just making it easier for communities to put these programs in place and for families to access these programs. So, you know, one of the things that looks like is making sure that communities are able to do the awareness campaigns necessary so that families know how to find a program. That might look like ensuring that, you saw from Crystal's slide about the different funding streams, there are lots of different funding programs that target more or less the same groups of kids and families, but each one of them has very specific requirements, specific guidelines, specific reporting requirements, and those things are not always aligned very well. So one thing we're focusing on, for instance, is aligning the eligibility for 21st Century Community Learning Centers and the Summer Nutrition Program so that the same kids who are accessing both programs are actually the same group of kids who are eligible, and that the most kids eligible are being served. So we really want to see governments continue to support expansion of the scope of these services. So it's not just about literacy and meals, but it also includes nutrition, social and emotional development, youth employment. You heard all these different wonderful types of programs and activities that happen in the summer. And we want to make sure that government is aware of and is supporting all of those, but really targeting that support at the kids who are most in need and have the most difficulty accessing those programs as it stands today. Certainly want to emphasize the systems for quality. Jen and Crystal both mentioned that quality is such an important part of the summer picture. We know a lot about what quality looks like and what kinds of quality practices result in outcomes for youth. So it's really important that communities are investing in the systems that ensure programs can go through a continuous improvement process, can continue to look at the quality factors and making sure that they're addressing those factors. And I will add that the data system piece that Jen mentioned is really critical here. So, you know, it's difficult for programs to collect and report and analyze data, and there's a lot that we can do at the agency level, at the community level, to support the data collection and data sharing that helps programs know who they're serving and know what they're doing and knowing what outcomes they're getting. And that's a really important piece of the quality picture that communities can really help support. And then the last is fostering partnerships. You know, you've kind of gotten a sense from this conversation, I hope, that summer learning doesn't just happen in schools. It's happening in parks, it's happening in libraries, community centers, public housing sites. You know, there are many, many different kinds of providers of summer opportunities that are all different. They look different, they feel different, but they can all be high quality and they can all be impactful. And, you know, schools can't do this work alone. So it's important for programs through, for instance, through ESSA, there are some opportunities for this, but we also see in some of these other supported, you know, some of these other federal programs and state programs that partnership is a really key component, and fostering that partnership, encouraging partnership, incentivizing partnership, that is going to make these summer systems so much more effective because it helps us reach more kids within a community. So those are kind of the big themes that we are, you know, hoping to see campaigns take a look at as they're thinking about summer. So Emily, we were thinking a little bit about, you know, how reporters might address these issues. Tell us more about sort of how reporters might want to be thinking about summer.
Well, I mean, certainly looking at the summer programs, you know, I think one thing that really came through in Jen's presentation is when we're talking about quality is there are some programs that are really well established and grounded and have been around long enough that reporters should be able to go to them and get some real numbers and some hard data. They're following these kids, they're tracking these kids, and in some cases they know a lot about their outcomes, not just for the summer or the year that they return to school, but, you know, 2, 3, 5 years ahead. So it would be great for you reporters to try to figure out what are the longstanding programs in your communities and what can they tell you and show you about their track records so that you're backing up some of the anecdotal experience or what you get to observe with some of that hard data. And I think it's a great idea to look at the RAND study and also at the NSLA website to find out what are the hallmarks of a high quality program before you go in to do those site visits, to make the most of that opportunity so that you're going in with a good grounding and understanding of what you're looking for. As you get more experienced at this, certain things are going to jump out at you as hallmarks, just as some things are going to jump out at you as red flags. But kind of having that in the back of the mind before you go into those programs is going to help you make the most of those visits.
Great, and we certainly see opportunities for reporters to visit so many different kinds of places in a community where summer opportunities are happening, and it might not be what you might think of as a traditional formal summer program. It doesn't have to be your school or even a formal community center like a Boys and Girls Club, but go to the library and find out what kind of activities kids are doing during the summer. We also think about places like WIC centers and other places where families are going to access other types of services and helping to spread the word about where, what other kinds of programming might be out there. So, going to the park and seeing those formal programs happening at the park or the rec center. There's so many places where summer learning happens. So I think there's such a great, place for folks to visit and sort of see what's going on and get those stories and dig into what are these families experiencing during the summer that we can support going further. And I just want to mention too, the president's budget will be coming out in a couple of weeks for the next fiscal year. We just passed a budget deal for the current fiscal year, and we saw a lot of great increases that Congress has been supporting throughout the last couple of years to really continue this investment in the federal programs that matter to summer programs. So, as the president's budget drops in February, there are definitely the funding streams that we'll be keeping an eye on to see how those funding streams are going to either be continued or be eliminated as the past presidential budgets have done. And then Congress has been continuing to support and restore that funding. So that funding picture will be something to keep an eye on as well over the next couple of weeks. And then asking again our presidential candidates, where do they stand on some of these financial supports that really are critical for helping communities invest in the summer space. Looking at my list here to see if we have other things. I know we can talk about summer.
Yeah, there's one more. I just want to add in while we're talking about the presidential election in that space. There's a lot of attention, understandably, being put right now on the youth vote. But I think that's a great opportunity to also talk about the young people who may not be voting, who are also considered disconnected youth. I mean, we're talking about young people 16 to 24 who are not in school or not working. A fantastic project by Mandy McLaren from the Courier Journal looking at disconnected youth. It's pretty incredible. In Louisville, she found an estimated 17,000 young people who are considered disconnected youth, and that's eventually going to cost that community $15 billion. That's a huge story. And looking at where those kids are, they don't become disconnected overnight. That's often a long, sad, difficult process. So I think really focusing on that group and talking about the needs of those particular young people needs to be just as important as the candidates who are courting the youth vote.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of the summer conversation has been focused, especially the last few years, on K to 3 literacy, thinking about early literacy and preparing kids for being ready to, be reading on grade level by grade 3. But we don't talk as much about what's happening with older youth in particular. So, there's lots of great summer programs that are helping connect kids to workplace skills, to get first generation kids ready to go to college, doing some of that key summer support that happens even that summer between high school and college. If they've been accepted to college, sometimes kids are falling through the cracks during the admissions process. And, that summer melt issue is something also that we're taking a look at. So there's definitely issues at different age levels. And I think, something that Crystal said was, reminding me that the outcomes that summer programs contribute to are the outcomes that communities are trying to tackle in different ways. So some places are really focused on attendance. Some places are really focused on high school graduation. Some are focused more on whole child development, youth development. There's lots of different ways that summer is connecting into these larger community goals. And so, at the local level, if you know the issues that your community is really focusing on and caring about, there's likely a summer connection. So there's certainly opportunities to help look for those. And that's something that NSLA can help folks do as well. We're connected with programs all across the country, and we kind of see what's happening in different types of communities and what that looks like. So, encourage folks to reach out to us for that kind of support. Anyone else? Crystal, Jen, Emily, any other story ideas or things that you think reporters should be taking a look at in this campaign season?
I do think it's important to pay attention to what the presidential candidates are saying and doing, but also to look at where that's coming down into the individual classroom level. This is a great time to reach out to, some of those community partners and the public-private partnerships and say, what's going to be new this summer? What should I be getting ready for? Because you're going to want those stories in the pipeline and ready to go. I know you may be watching this webinar with a little bit of frost on your window, maybe even some snow outside your office right now, but it's going to be here before you know it. So this is actually a really good time to be thinking ahead on what those summers are going to look like.
Yeah, we know March, February, March is when summer programs start opening up their registration lists and, families start taking a look at what are my kids going to be doing this summer. So this is a great time to start thinking about summer even when there's snow on the ground. All right, wanted to see if there are any questions. I'm not seeing any on our Q&A or our chat box here. I'll give people just a couple moments to add any questions if you've got any questions for our panel.
While we're waiting, I've got a question for Crystal.
Great.
Crystal, what has been the biggest change or evolution in the Boys and Girls Club's approach to reaching out to families and recruiting for summer opportunities, maybe people who aren't already part of the club community? Have there been any changes?
Sure. So that looks a little bit different in different communities. But I think local organizations are always taking stock of what's happening with their kids and where they're going. So for example, in San Francisco, they're experiencing a lot of kids and families who live in hotels. And they've really partnered with different shelters and community organizations to make sure that they can even align their transportation to get those kids to the club and take them, right? And so I think local Boys and Girls Clubs are looking at what's happening with kids in terms of the transient nature of communities and really in an ongoing way assessing their partnerships. I would say, school partnerships are mission critical to us. And we've seen a lot of different models for what school partnerships could look like. Everything from our traditional club in schools, where clubs share physical space with the school, or local CEOs really working with community organizations and schools to build on to new schools. So again, I think there's a lot of innovation happening as we think about partnerships and reaching youth in different ways.
Thank you. I also have a question for Jen. Jen, I want to know, when you're looking at some of the studies and places where the summer learning programs have been successful, are there common underlying themes or approaches, for example, providing transportation or offering extended hours to parents and families? Are there certain hallmarks that are across all of those programs that if I was a reporter, I'd be looking for something like that?
Yeah, so I would say that, it's interesting because in some of the literature gives us a lot more detail about implementation details than others. And so this is actually something that we have recommendations for researchers too, to be able to include more of these types of details. But things that do stand out are clearly attendance matters. And so I think that what programs can take out of that is how to think about what barriers to attendance actually exist. And in some communities, that really means providing transportation and ensuring that kids can get there and have routes to get there safely. Program design and intentionality is critical, right? So programs can be designed to affect a lot of different types of outcomes, but it is through the programming itself and the content that kids are receiving that those outcomes are derived. And so really thinking about what kids might need. And that sometimes takes talking to community members, to families, to schools, to youth themselves, to understanding sort of like what the purpose, who your target population is, and then building the program to meet the needs and your goals inside that program. And another factor has to do with kind of this idea of duration. So there are some types of summer programs where like short and quick and experiential is exactly meeting the goals and the needs of a family. And then there are other types of programs where if you are, for instance, trying to achieve academic outcomes, where you want longer and sustained periods of time with kids in order to be able to see those. And so there are these sort of like quality and consistency like across these studies and those types of things, but not as much information as we might want on how individual programs are actually tackling those barriers. And so I actually have a question for Crystal, if we have a couple minutes, which is around this. And one of the issues that the National Academy of Sciences Committee found in our investigation were sort of like barriers around in rural communities in particular, which are related to this idea of transportation, how to provide sort of like programming when you have a dispersed population and may not have a robust transportation system to get us there. And I noticed that in your presentation on sort of like where the clubs are, rural communities are represented. And I was wondering if you have like tips for people on how you were able to make this happen.
Sorry, I was on mute. We have a lot of strategies that really are geared to really think about rural communities. One at the organizational level is how do we help maybe larger organizations provide shared services with smaller organizations who may not have certain systems in place to provide those quality conditions for implementation. The other is we're looking at our training model and really trying to decentralize training across Boys and Girls Clubs. So for example, our goal is to make sure that within a 50-mile radius of any Boys and Girls Club, there's a trainer. There's a trainer who can provide coaching and guidance on basic high-quality youth development practices. I think we're also, from an organizational development perspective, really looking at how do we create teams that can support rural communities. Teams from an organizational perspective, a youth development perspective, and a safety perspective. So the way that we are serving clubs is going to help drive how we think about rural communities. But I think part of, as we think about our digital strategy, that's going to be a key component of really serving the needs of rural communities.
Great, thank you so much. These are all, you can hear from this discussion, there's so much to dig into in the summer space and much more than we can cover in just 1 hour. So we want to make sure that you are aware of how to get in touch with us and share, find more information about how to get connected with these issues and learn more. So at the National Summer Learning Association website, we have a knowledge center with tons of this information about some of the data, the research, some of the other pieces. The presidential guidance memo that we shared at the beginning of this discussion is also available in our knowledge center, and connection to many of the communities that we've done some work in. And then lastly, I'll just let you know that you can always contact us. Our communications team is led by the wonderful Laura Johnson. Her contact information is here, and we have a page for press that shares with you some of the key pieces and how to get in touch with us to get connected. So please, be in conversation with us. We can share with you many different experts who can talk with you more about this issue, either nationally or locally. So we're excited to keep the conversation going, and we know it's only January and summer feels like a long way off, but we're thinking about summer year-round. So we're glad to have you all here in this journey with us. So please join me in thanking our presenters, Emily, Jen, Crystal. Thank you so much for the wonderful information that you shared with us today. As I said, we've recorded this webinar. We'll be sharing it out with folks throughout the season. And please be in touch with us as we start to think about summer. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.